Hello friends, welcome to Alibro's EduSoft Free Education YouTube channel. Now we are going to discuss Plus 1 Economics first chapter, Indian Economy on the Eve of Independence. Now the discussion is about part 1 of the chapter. So friends, in the previous part 1 of the chapter, Indian Economy on the Eve of Independence, we have discussed about all the reasons which were led to the colonial rule of British in India. So the reasons we discussed in the previous chapter were about the agricultural stagnation, impact of British rule on industrial sector, then about the foreign trade and the demographic conditions. So in this lesson, in this part, we are going to deal with the remaining reasons of the stagnation of development in our country. In that, the first reason is based on the structure of employment. When we say about the structure of employment, it is mainly about the occupational structure. India's occupational structure at the time of British, it is categorized into three sectors: primary, secondary and tertiary sector. Before going into the sectors, I would like to explain what is meant by occupational structure. Occupational structure of a nation, it refers to the percentage of its workforce employed in various economic ventures, which means there are many group of people who are employed in different occupations all over the country. So that percentage of the workforce who are employed in all these sectors are categorized and it is known by the name occupational structure. To sum it all, we can say that how many of the total working population are employed in each and every sectors, which means first in agriculture and the associated activities, and how many of them are involved in manufacturing and other sectors, and also how many are identified from the service sector. So this is what meant by the occupational structure. As a whole, we'll say that the workforce who are employed in the three sectors of the country. When we want to categorize the people or the workforce who are employed, which means the percentage at the time of British, in agricultural sector it is 70 to 75%, and in secondary or the manufacturing sector it is about less than 10%. When we say about the service sector, the workforce who are employed in is 15% to 20%. By this we can understand that the more number of workforce were employed in the agricultural sector. So this is a mind map or just a diagrammatic representation about the economy. First of all, production. After the production, it goes for consumption. At the same time, it goes for distribution. For consumption and distribution, the materials or the products in production are used. And next, for the consumption, the products are either consumed or they are exchanged. So there also we can see a to and fro motion between consumption and exchange. At the same time, it is there in production and consumption. And in the process of exchange, we can see a two-way process to distribution as well as for exchange. The products which are meant for exchange are either distributed or redistributed to the people. So in all, production, distribution, consumption and exchanges are well knit together and are pervasive in nature, which means it can be applied in all levels. So this is a mind map about the economy. Next is the description about various sectors of the Indian economy at the time of British rule. In this slide, you can see that first the primary sector is explained. Forestry, fishing, farming and mining are some of the examples of primary sector. In primary sector, we can see only the extraction, which means we'd like to collect all the raw materials, all the raw stuffs and then process it in the secondary sector. So the main activities which include in the primary sector are forestry, fishing, farming and mining. Next is the secondary sector. This sector is also called manufacturing sector. Here, the processing of goods and services are dealt with. Car manufacturers, then steel works, dressmakers, builders are included in this secondary sector. Next is the service sector or the tertiary sector. In this, legal services, distribution, customer service and accounting are used. Here, the processed goods from the secondary sector, which is brought in by the primary sector, are distributed or made service to the people. So this is all about the three sectors. To elaborate or to know about the difference between these three sectors, kindly follow this chart. First, in the primary sector, we can see in the first column allied services sector, which means in this sector the first activities of each and every sector are initiated. So allied services sector. Next is about raw materials. Here are first the raw materials are initiated and then it goes to the next three sectors. And in all the three sectors, the main characteristic or the major characteristic of this sector is that it is an unorganized sector. Hence, all the activities are initiated through this sector. This sector is called unorganized sector, which is the main important characteristic of this sector. So, when we say about primary sector, we know that it is all about agriculture and its allied activities. Next, going to secondary sector. When saying about the secondary sector, it is about manufacturing sector. Also, the materials are processed and manufactured in this sector. Whereas when we compare with the primary sector, it is all about raw materials. When we say that about primary sector, we say that it is an unorganized sector. When coming to manufacturing, it is an organized sector because all the raw materials from the primary sector, they are collected and brought to the secondary sector for further processing of finished goods. Next is that it's otherwise known as manufacturing sector that we have already studied. Next is tertiary sector. From primary to secondary and then to tertiary, it is also called as service sector, which means the finished products or the processed goods from the secondary sector, they are distributed to the final consumers or other retailers who are in need of those goods. So this sector is called service sector. It's mainly deals with distribution of goods and services. Since we say about the primary sector, it is organized, it is unorganized. Here we can say about the tertiary sector, it is an organized one. All the details or all the goods in dealt with this sector, they are in an organized manner. It mainly deals with banking and insurance. Service sector is all about banking and insurance. So this is a very bird's view point difference of primary, secondary and tertiary sectors. Next is the features of occupational structure. Next we are going to discuss the features of occupational structure. In that, first we are going to discuss about the predominance of agricultural sector. Occupational structure at that time, we know that more than 70%, which means 70 to 75% of the Indian population or the population in this Indian subcontinent, they are fully dependent on the agricultural sector. So the main feature of the occupational structure will be the predominance of agricultural sector. Agriculture, it was the principal source of occupation that we all know that it is a primary source of occupation of the people in India. Around 75% population was engaged in agriculture. It results in backwardness of Indian economy at the time of independence. When comparing the Indian economy during the colonial rule of British with the present scenario, we can see a gradual decrease in the amount of population who are employed in the primary sector or the agricultural sector. So 75% was engaged in agriculture, resulting in backwardness of Indian economy at the time of independence. When moving on to the manufacturing sector and about the service sectors, the manufacturing and service sectors, it accounted for only 10 and 15 to 20% respectively, which means manufacturing sectors, it accounted for 10% and service sector, it accounted for 15 to 20%. So actually all the growth related with the sectors were very moving in an unbalanced manner. So there is no fixed rate or fixed plan for the implementation of plans and policies in each and every sectors. So thereby an unbalanced growth was seen in all the three sectors, which is a major drawback in the occupational structure during the colonial time of British in India. Next is about the growing regional variations. So this section is also dealing with the unbalanced, inorganized manner of occupational structure in British India. So the states like Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, Karnataka, Maharashtra and West Bengal, it witnessed a shift of dependence on the workforce from agricultural sector to manufacturing and service sectors, which means a great decrease in the number of workforce who are employed in agricultural sector. So from all these states, there is a percentage of people or workforce, they started to depend on other two sectors, which means on the manufacturing and service sectors, thereby avoiding the agricultural sector, which remains to be the backbone of Indian subcontinent. However, there had been an increase in the share of the workforce in agriculture during the same time in states such as Odisha, Rajasthan and Punjab. So, when Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, Karnataka, Maharashtra and West Bengal, there witnessed a decrease in the workforce employed in agricultural sector, some things were upside down in other side of Indian subcontinent. The areas like Odisha, Rajasthan and Punjab have seen an increase in the agricultural workforce. So this is a opposite scenario of both the sectors in the category of occupational structure. So this is a map showing the features of occupational structure, which means the features that we see in the before slide. Predominance of agricultural sector, in that the main points are the primary source of occupation, it was agriculture, 75% population engaged in agriculture. Then manufacturing and service sector, it account for 15 and 20% and 10% respectively. And about the imbalanced economy. Next is a growing regional variation, another important feature, that is many states witnessed shift from agricultural sector to manufacturing and tertiary sector. Also many witnessed shift from other two sectors to agricultural sector. So this table, it shows the distribution of working population during that time. So this is from 1951, which means from the starting of 5-year plan in India to 2000, which means after the implementation of new economic policy in 1991. So this has been a wide range of percentages given for all the three sectors. When we closely analyze all the three sectors, primary, secondary and tertiary, in primary in 1951, which means during the implementation of 5-year plan, we can see that more than 70%, approximately 72.1% working population, they depend on agriculture. But in the moving years or in the coming years, in 1981, which means a 20 years gap, more than 30-year gap, then in 1991 in a 10-year gap, and after in 2000 in a 9-year gap, we can see there is a gradual decrease in the employment of workforce depending on primary sector or the agricultural sector, which has been 68.7 in 1981, 66.8 in 1991 and 56.7 in 2000 respectively. In the next sector, in the secondary sector, there is an increase, a gradual increase, which means in 1951 it was 10.6% and after 30 years it has been changed or increased to 13.5, which is in 1981, and in 1991 it rose to 12.7, which is a short decrease, and next it has got an increase in 2000 within 9 years, gives the percentage to 17.5. Next, about the tertiary sector, first itself it was there in 17.3% and only some points were increased within 30 years, which means a stable development, not a high development. So it was 17.8 in 1981, and in 1991 within a gap of 10 years it rose to 20.5%, and in 2000 it was 25.8%. So in tertiary sector we can see a gradual increase from 17.3 to 25.8 in 2000, whereby in the primary sector we can see a gradual decrease, and in the secondary sector we can see a sort of increase as well as a decrease in the sector. So this is actually the distribution of working population which is represented in percentage, which means these figures are very important. This can be caught out by the students when you are asked for writing the occupational structure for the exam. This will give you additional marks. We are moving on to the next reason, infrastructural problems. So occupational structure, it's over, and next is infrastructural problems on the eve of independence. So during that time, the main thing that the British they brought out in the infrastructure was railways, ports, water transport, post telegraphs. Also the railway sector was also developed. Before moving on to the developments made by the British in India, which means about the basic infrastructure and about the railway structure and other contributions, we need to know what infrastructure is all about and what is meant by infrastructure. Infrastructure, it can be referred to the basic physical operations of a nation or a business, such as communication, transportation, water, sewage, etc. So infrastructure, it deals with all these things: communication, then transportation, which comes under road, railways, waterways, then sewage, drainage system, all the basic facilities that a country need to set up. It means infrastructure. This operation can be highly expensive investments and an important aspect of economic development of a country. Infrastructural facilities of a country, it needs huge expenditure. It is a huge expensive policy setup, but it paves the path to the economic development of the country. During the colonial period in India, the basic infrastructure such as water transport, railways, post and telegraph, and the ports, it was developed, but it was developed not to serve the people of India or the people of Indian subcontinent. It was developed to serve the colonial interest, which is clearly explained in this point, but to serve the colonial interest rather than serving the common people. The common people, it includes the people of India. Roads constructed were not fit for modern India, couldn't connect rural roads, shortage of well constructed road, especially in the rainy season. So this point, it shows all the drawbacks which were set up in the British India during the colonial. Roads, they were not fit for the modern transportation system, and those transportation system, they couldn't connect it to the rural one. Only it helped the urban people and the urban areas, and also the roads, they were not well structured or well constructed. These roads, they were of no use during the rainy season. So these all were the drawbacks of the basic infrastructural facilities created by British during that time. However, in the year 1850, the introduction of railway was one of the most important contribution of the British. So this year 1850, it's very important as it was the introduction of railway by the British in India. Actually, this initiative, it transformed the Indian economy in two ways. So these two ways are very important, as one, it led people to travel long distance. As you know that the basic transportation facilities, they were very low, so the people, they cannot travel for long distance with such a kind of a transportation system. So with the coming of railway, they could travel long distance and break the geographical barrier. So this was the first merit by the coming of railway. The second one is that it commercialized Indian agriculture, which adversely influenced the self-sufficiency of the village economies in India. Which means when we studied about the agricultural stagnation, we told a reason called commercialization of agriculture, which means the producers from the agricultural needs or the producers from the agricultural land, they need to be commercialized. If it gets commercialized only, the benefits can be reaped by the farmers. So with the help of the railways, now commercialization of Indian agriculture has become so simple that they can brought in or bring these producers to other areas for sale. So it mainly influences the self-sufficiency of village economies in India. Last one, with the development of railways and roads, the colonial regulation, it also took steps for the improvement of sea lanes and inland trade. Not only the development happens in the transportation system, in roadways and railways, it also happens in the waterways through inland trade and sea trade. When we say about the sea trade, we would like to remember the opening up of Suez Canal by the British that we studied in the earlier chapter, in the earlier part. So here the postal services, it was actually useful for the society. It remained insufficient. With all the facilities and with all the developments, some developments were very low and were not useful for the common people. Postal services being one of the major facility which is used by the common people, it was not at all developed. But at the same time, the trade which were used by the other people other than the common people, it was well flourished. So this is all about, by these all the reasons, the chapter Indian Economy on the Eve of Independence, it has been summarized, or this chapter, it is all about the reasons or the condition of the Indian economy during the British rule in India. For that we have discussed many reasons. First reason is about the agricultural, and second one was about the industrial sector. Third one is about the foreign trade. Fourth and fifth one are demographic conditions and the structure of employment, which means the occupational structure. So from occupational structure we are discussing in this chapter, and we have discussed about the infrastructural problems and also the main terms and services. When saying about the infrastructural problems, we need to remember about the introduction of railway. The year, it is 1850, and the first train, it was from Bombay to Thane. What it helped is for long distance traveling, and it break the geographical barriers. Then it helped in the commercialization of agriculture, and the major one, the last but not the least point, is that export trade increases. You know that when export trade increases, we'll have more earnings from other countries to our country. Next an important year is the introduction of postal service. It started in 1837, which means it was started more before the introduction of railway. So when there is a question called, when does the telegraph services and the postal services started? It is in 1837. And last is coming up of Tata Airlines. Tata Airlines, it was set up in 1932. So all these years are very important. Setting up of Tata Airlines, it is in 1932, and at last, by the setting up of Tata Airlines, what happens is it gave birth to the aviation sector in India. So with all the sectors, aviation sector, it was initiated in 1932. So this is all about the infrastructure and about this chapter.